All right, we're in Siman Kuf Zayin in Yoreh. This Siman, I'm gonna say it is hard, and every time I read it, I think I'm an idiot, and then I realize actually, well, I might still be an idiot, but a lot of the Mefarshim are like very confused as to what's going on here, what's the actual scenario we're in. If you, I didn't assign it, but if you look at the very long Shach, which is a Shach Aleph on this Siman, he goes through because the Tarat Chatat tries to bring, which the Ramah tries to bring lots of ways to be makil, and he tries to fight all of those. But part of it is we have lots of concepts going on in a real case that I think happens all the time. Maybe not the fish case for all of us, but the egg case at least, right? I think is real. Or to put it differently, a case where you boil a bunch of things, you do bishul on a bunch of things, enough that if there's something Isra that happened to be there, okay, fine, it'd be mivatel b'shishim with the water plus the, whatever tzir plus whatever, other of the items are there. You get, all it's like our original case, so like everything comes together to add up to 60. But then when you pour it out, you can get yourself into scenarios where you lose your ratio. And the question is that thing that even though it was batel, maybe can come back and be oser again. And can that then, when it osers a bunch of things, can they then oser everything or be osrin everything else? Is that a good summary? People agree with that summary there? I think that's what's coming out, right? And so we get a couple, I just, before we read inside, different concepts of that have come to us that come into this case. For instance, I'm just gonna maybe throw it out there. What concepts of kind of interaction between Easter and Heter are we getting here that are kind of on the table, no pun intended, or maybe in the pot for us to have to deal with in this case, depending on how you see the scenario, which is another question.
Isur Balua.
Good, right. Isur Balu is a big thing, right? This is right. You have an Isur Balua. How much can you be Oser when you have an Isur Balua in you, right? Into other things. Good. What else? What other Max?
I don't know if this counts, but like Rotev and Molich Isser is a big question.
Yes. Good. Exactly. Right. The question of, do you need Rotev? What does Rotev do versus what happens when you have like a Yavesh interaction between two hot things is going to be very important here, and also depend on how you see what's going on in this case. Good. What else?
You could also say like Hashash, like what should we suspect might happen versus like when we don't know, especially in the eggs case.
Good. So chashash, I would say even to build upon that, maybe safek, and maybe to build upon safek, the question of machzakinan isura or la machzakinan isura, right? How do we play this, or the way that it's played out in is it Zvachim? Yeah, it's in Zvachim, right? The whole question of like the isur beruva ite, right? Does the isur exist? Do we assume it's with the rov or not? Um, Right, those are all questions we're going to deal with. We're actually going to have us look at an unseen thing in Kufyat Aleph at some point. Well, we'll see. We'll see how time goes because there's a competing piece in the Shulchan Aruch in Kufyat Aleph that seems to kind of like not work with any of this, and a lot of the later Achronim bring that up actually. Um, Good. Anything else? I should maybe I'll. What kind of kalim are we dealing with here?
There's a pan, there's a pot, there's a transfer between the pan and the pot.
You could. It's something better than
I
that.
don't know what it's made out of, but yeah.
Halachic language. I don't care what it's made out of right now.
Not earthenware, not absorbent,
Uh, I don't know if I care about the clay, and that's also important, but like there's something else I'm looking. This is unfair. Like as a teacher, you try to get people to answer what's in your brain. But Reuven, what do your hand has been there
Is
for?
it that the Ka'ara is a Klisheni and
Yeah, you got
the
Kli Rishon, Kli
Lahevet is the
Sheni.
Kli Rishon?
Exactly, Kli Rishon, Kli Sheni, and Irui Kli Rishon is going to play into this too, right? If you're pouring from a Kli Rishon to a Kli Sheni, how much is that Oser? That's been a big question for us, and that's going to come up in this scenario as well. Um, Good. The other thing that
We also forgot Birya. I just
Oh, yes, good. Birria is going to come out, or it's going to come up. Or we're going to push it down very quickly, right? That's but it will come up. The thing that doesn't come up in any of these, and but I think is sitting behind a lot of this, and to how you read what the case is in the smug and how you interpret it and so forth, has to do with the question of Hanan. Also, I think Hanan sits behind a lot of this because how. if you are oser, 20 fish and they come and interact with the next 30, well, how much now do you have to fight against, right? Do you just have to fight against what's baluabo, or is it like, are each of those fish an Isser in themselves now? And I think this is my own take, although I think I saw somewhere that somebody late says something, like late Acharon says something about this, that maybe that's the difference between, right? Well, I mean, this is a good question for me to ask this. It's a good time to ask this question. The Mechaber, how does he hold on Hanan? Bashari Surim.
Doesn't happen.
No Hanan Shari Surim. The Tur, how does he hold Hanan Bashari Surim?
Same thing. Doesn't
No,
happen.
exactly. The Bach, how does he hold the Hanan Bashari Surim? Yeah, I'm pretty sure the Bach, the Taz, the Shach, the Ramah all hold Bashar Isurim, although Lo Mikar Hadin, which is also important, right? They hold that Hanan does exist, but or either even if it's or at least there are many major leniencies in it, even if it's not if it is Mikar Hadin. So uh, um, so we hold even though they don't hold like Rabbeinu Ephraim, they're willing to rely on him in certain cases. Either belach belach, maybe we don't hold it, or belach belach behefsed merubah, we don't rely, don't hold Hanan, and so forth. So those are all important things to know for that. Okay. I don't know if there's anything else. Oh, the one other thing that is kind of like the lam machzekina and isura is also like the question of having a chazaka of kashrut, right? Which is going to come into the play about do you need to kasher any of the utensils in this case also. Um, okay. Let's jump in now. We'll read the tour. This is my plan. We'll read the tour. We'll try to understand his scenario, how the Isur is happening. We're going to understand, he's really quoting the smug. We're going to look at the Beit Yosef, how he understands it. He's going to have a different reading of the smug, I mean, literally a different girsa, and therefore a different reading. Then I'd like to look at the Bach, who thinks the Beit Yosef is wrong, of course, because why not? And then, depending on time, we may look at the Prisha, but we may just go to the Shulchan Aruch and see how he does things, and maybe see some of his Nosei Kalim. And then we're going to come back because this is all talking about case one. We do have to talk about the case of the fly in your your hot in your tea or your soup that you take out with the spoon, and what the status of that spoon becomes, especially because if people know Masechet Megillah, which is coming up as in Yana de Yoma, right? There's a whole thing with Achashverosh and the fly. If you know Achashverosh and the fly and Haman, right? This is right. Not the fly, it's the wine. In the fly and the wine. No, people know, right? The Haman says to Achashverosh, says, "Look, you want to see what these Jewish people are like." They drop a fly falls in their wine. They take it out with the spoon. All is good. They'll drink the wine. But if you touch their wine, they won't drink it. Look at how much they hate you. Right. This is everyone should learn those amazing, amazing midrashim and Masechet Megillah on all, like pretty much all of Megillat Esther. All right, that's my plug for learning that Gemara when you have spare time. Tour, Kuf Zayin. Let's see, Jacob, start us out. Oh no, Jacob, you didn't want. You've had a rough week, right? You didn't want to
Well,
read.
I think I can do the tour. It might not be my best, but I think I can do it.
We'll help you, please.
Yeah. Katav b'Sefer Mitzvot. Dakim ktanim shnit baslu v'nimtza behen dag tameh yesh osrim. Afilu makiro v'zarko v'yesh shishim levatlo. So it's written in the Sefer Mitzvot. You said the smog. The small fish that are cooked together, and you find a tame fish among them. There are those that prohibit, even if you recognize it and throw it out, and there's 60 to battle it.
Good. He's going to explain why, and this is going to be not based on, right, if there's 60 to batil it, great, but the process of what you do afterwards is going to be an important thing. Okay, so keep going. Apparently, by the way, I think this is like still the case. I don't know. I like a sardine plants. I assume that they boil lots of sardines together, right? This is eating. And I didn't look. Someone could probably look. I'm sure the OU has an article on this. It's probably worth it, right? Of like what do they do in their process of being, you can buy sardines under hashgacha all over the place. They must, they probably do get fish in there that are not sardines, that are maybe even asur, maybe a piece of shrimp or something like that. And so how do they deal with these cases? So, okay, keep going.
Lefi kisamara mayim hachamim. Besofa iroi im me'at mayim yishar hadag tame. im esrim oim shoshim dagim. V'nesru v'chozer namayim v'nogin l'chol dagim. So, because sometimes when stirring or pouring,
It's got to be pouring here, I think.
yeah,
Yeah.
when pouring the hot water, sometimes at the end of the pouring, the tame fish will remain with a bit of the water with 20 or with 30 other fish. And so it's not going to actually be 60 to bottle the
Mhm.
fish in this kind of intermediate stage. And it would prohibit the rest of those fish in the water. And then when that joins the rest of the water, um, and touches all the fish there, it's going to prohibit the rest of those.
Good. It's still not 100% clear what this case is going on here, right? In the tour,
Mhm.
I think he's a little vague. But I don't know, Jacob, what do you see? You kind of said it, but what's going on? How is the pouring going?
So you have one pot that has enough, it has a ton of fish and enough to bottle it, presumably, but then you're pouring it into another pot before you take the tame fish out.
Yeah.
And in the midst of that pouring, there's like a break where part of the pot, um, so part of what's in the pot remains there with the tame fish, um, and that's gonna make that part of the mixture just all tame. So when you mix it back with the rest, you know, it's you would need 60 to Mivato what was left in the pot, and that's just not going to be the case of what you have.
Good. I just want to make sure we're clear on this. So, what's the method of so let's pretend like for instance, I somehow you get a separation. There's 30 fish with the Isur fish, and then there's like 20 other fish there, or even 30 other. Let's say 30 other. We'll make it really easy.
Mm-hmm.
And what's the method of making those other 30 fish according to the tour Asur?
Um, well, it's going to be,
He
I
actually
guess,
said that explicitly.
Mayim Hachamin, it's going to be hot water. It's going to be
Yes,
Bissell.
it seems to be the hot water in the tour's imagination of this scenario. Or this is the smug, actually. Really, the smug is the hot water is going to go right. You have let's say 30 fish with an Isur fish amongst them and some water, and the water is a sore, right? Because there's not
Mm-hmm.
60 to 1, and that Isur water now pours onto the other 20, 30 fish, whatever. And that
Mm-hmm.
Isur water is also those fish. Now, this is, of course, one of the big questions we're going to come up here is, well, I'll throw it out there. What's the big question of like, how is that water Oser the other fish? What kind of mechanism max? What is it?
I guess, is it only through Nagia, which is to say that you would only need Klipa, or is there some more intrusive Isser that
Well,
happens?
good. Exactly. Because remember, this is potentially heroically reshown. Oh, Ari, you had something you want to add to that?
I was gonna say, it also depends how hot it is. Is it still chamin, right? Like hot water from the original pot, immediate enough to not be cliche.
Exactly. Good. So it seems to be heroically reshown, I would say, is probably what's going on here. And some of the question might happen, like how potent an Isur force, an Oser force, what I would say really
Mm-hmm.
is heroically reshown, which is a big question, right? We have everyone from the Maharshal who seems to think it's like as if it's Kli Rishon to, people say that heroically Rishon is Klisheni and nothing to maybe something like it's Kidei Klipa or Kidei Natila or something, depending on the heat of it. So we have the whole range for Erie Cleary Sean. Good. I mean, this is right. I actually think, and we'll get into the materium, but a real scenario, like if I just think about cooking pasta, right? Anyone here cooks now, you probably don't have an Easter piece of pasta in there usually, but okay, as you drain it out, or maybe even dump it into something, but I imagine even a colander, right? I pour some water has drained out the bottom of the colander. There's some pasta that's fallen into the colander and is staying there, and there's some pasta remaining in the pot, and I'm still pouring, right? And I may do it in one or two
Mm-hmm.
pours. And you can imagine if there were an Isur in there, and we can imagine, although we don't know necessarily, the Isur stayed in the top, the machabat, right, in the pot itself, and not in the colander. It's oser the water, and then the rest of the water pours onto the rest of the piece of the pasta and makes everything asur. Right? That's yeah, Ori.
I have maybe an obvious clarifying question. Was the first thing I thought of when he started talking about birria. Is the original tray fish not a birria? Can that be
It's
bottled?
good. Well, you have to remove the fish, remember, but the fish
Okay.
is the patel. But once you remember, because he says even if you makirov is rako, right?
Right. So,
Yeah,
but if it's cooked with everything else and then I remove it, we don't have to worry about flavor
because
transfer.
good. This is a good review. This is like what's so
Yeah,
amazing
that's why
about
I'm
this.
just
Well,
realizing it's like old, but
Yeah, Jacob, what do you have?
Well, I mean, if they're all the same type of fish, you would have to think about how to bittle it, but they would still there wouldn't really be flavor transfer if they're the same type of fish.
Good.
oh, because it's Mimimino.
That's me, no. I don't think it's the same kind of fish because it's an Isur fish, and so this, by the way, is actually a big. This shows up in is it the Shach or the Taz? I can't remember now. I apologize. It's a whole thing of like, well, is this mim bimino or mim b'she'eno mino? And
Mm.
maybe he says at least if you go Batar Shma, right, which the Rama does, although the Taz does not. I think it's the Taz is why I remember this. That if you go Batar Shma, um, then maybe all fish are just called fish, right? If you look in Tanakh, right, in the Torah right? In Vayikra, in Parshat Shmini, in Parshat Re'eh, does Hashem say to us like this fish and this fish? No, Hashem just says, Stapir v'kaskeset. And it seems that fish just have like go find in Tanakh fish that have different name than just fish, right? This is maybe all fish have the same name. All right. The other possibility is maybe all fish taste kind of alike. I don't know. It's there are lots of fish that do taste alike. It's not crazy, and some of them are probably kosher, and some of them probably aren't. But um, so yeah, there's that. So maybe it is mimino. But just to go back to the birria thing, or remember, birria itself is not batel, but its pleta, its flavor is batel, right? So once you take that fish out, we're dealing with the flavor of the fish. Ravlana, sorry, was that a no? You're good. Okay. But so yeah, no, these are all and birria is this is what someone brought up. Birria is still a thing here. Now, of course, you can ask, and maybe I'll ask it now. Wait a second, although we're going to see this in a second, but we can anticipate. What about these 20 fish that have become asoro? Aren't they birria? Why not?
Let me see. Yeah.
Wait. Someone give me why. Why is that not a birria?
Because it's only Isser Balua, it's not Atzmo.
Exactly. Isser balua doesn't right. A birria, you can't be a birria if you're Isser if you the Isser that you have is a balua Isser. So. Okay. This is why, as I say, this like feels so real to me. This Siman, and also so difficult. This really gets us into like how difficult these like cases are because this actually brings everything we've seen up until now into play, and then tries to actually say, well, and we don't exactly know what happened, which is like how you're going to get your phone calls usually. Someone's going to call you and say, oh my gosh, I did this, and you say, well, what were the details? I don't know. I just dumped stuff into a pot. I don't, I went from the pot to the colander. I don't know what I did in between.
Mhm.
And so now you have to kind of there's like the guesswork or maybe the what assumptions are we halakhically allowed to make about all this? All right, so let's do the Yesh Matirim. Jacob, keep going.
Yes. ויש מתירין מפני שאותם 20 או 30 נשארים בת אילן ברוב תערובת כי לא שייך לומר ביריה לא בטלה אלא בביריה שנסרה מחמת עצמה ולא שנסרה מחמת בליעת איסור אחר. And there are those that would prohibit because
Oh, no, other way.
sorry, permit, yes.
Yeah.
Because those 20 or 30 that remained would still be Buffalo Rove, because it's not relevant to say Birria isn't Batil, except with Birria that was Usher because of itself. Right, rather, yeah, rather birria because of itself is not batil, but it but we don't
And not the
add an
case,
act.
and not
What?
the case where it became asur because it absorbed from another. It's a long sentence.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, okay. But why aren't they chozur no? Why don't they go and make asur the other fish?
ואין חוזרין ואוסרין השאר שמחבת, אף על פי שנוגן בהן המים, לפי שאיסור נפלא ואין איסורו מחמת עצמו, אינו חוזר ונבלע ביבש, כי אם על ידי בישול.
Mhm.
Um, so even though, yeah, so the rest of these in the pot, even though they touch the water, since the isser that's absorbed is absorbed with them, and they're not isser because of themselves, it doesn't go back and like exude that isser and have it be absorbed into dry fish that it's touching, unless there's more bishul.
Yeah, bishul being with water here, I think, right? It has to
Yeah,
be
yeah.
clean, and not. It's interesting. He says hashar b'sheba machabat, right? Which sounds like it's still those all the fish might still be in the kli rishon at this point. This is how some people
Mm-hmm.
understand it: is that like as you pour, it's going to separate the fish into two groups or more groups, right? Some are on
Mm-hmm.
like the side, some are at the bottom, and then they kind of all come back together. So you're just maybe draining the water in this case, and the way he understands it is that the water is maybe going out. It's not oser for, he doesn't say why, the smug, but and then you have the 20 fish that became asur become batel barov and the other 30, 40, 50, 100 other fish, whatever it may be.
Mm-hmm.
All right. This will all be complicated when we get to eggs, where the assumption is the number is not so high. Right.
Mm-hmm.
People maybe, I don't know about you, the most eggs I think I've ever cooked together, I don't know, maybe 20 if I've hard boiled together, it's but never never hundreds. I've never also cooked hundreds of little fish, but I think people do. Like the fish I buy, as I said, in the can did come from a plant that did cook hundreds of fish.
Mm-hmm.
um, as opposed to eggs. I don't know about if you buy like those pre-boiled, hard-boiled eggs, you can get them, how many those are. And again, it would be interesting to look at the kashrut agencies who certify them to ask them like how many are going on and how are you thinking about this scenario in case like there's an egg with an efroach or dam. Although, as a side note, I think this is like from the articles I've been able to read and also from like Rav Moshe Feinstein and so forth. It seems in our world Beitzat Efroch, Beitzat Dam are almost non-existent.
Mm-hmm.
So even though I'm not saying I check, but it's not according to the OU, if you see a blood spot in your egg, it's probably just not a blood spot actually. And so, all right,
Mm-hmm.
but nonetheless, it's something worth thinking about. All right, any questions about the tour? I mean, there's plenty of questions about the tour, but anything that we need to clarify so far? Anything bothering you about everything in the tour here? Yeah, Max.
Just when we say rotev, like throughout here, we are talking about water or not necessarily?
Good. Not necessarily. It could be the sear. The
Right.
what do you call the liquid that comes out of the fish? What is that called?
Yeah.
Whatever it
Fish
is.
juice.
Yeah, fish juice. This will be an interesting question too, in all of this because I don't know if we've talked about this or not. What's the status of sear shel dagim? Like a dag tameh?
Mm. I know I've definitely seen this come up in other learning at least, but I have no recollection.
Yeah, it's a machloket, but Tosfot think I can't remember where it is right now. Tosfot hold that Tzir of Dag Tameh might actually be derabanan, asur, and not asur deoraita. Which is an interesting question. How's that different from the right the tam? But maybe and this will be a very like this. Some people say the tam is what you get when you cook it, but the tzir is when you get or when you boil it, and tzir is what you get when it just sits there. I'm not so sure. But I just throw that out there that it kind of gives us another axis. I'm not here to clarify anything. I'm just here to kind of complicate this issue. Is my job today. All right, Ori
So
and then HSF.
so then going back to the so sort of the Reisha of the Yesh Matirin, that's maybe the most mysterious
Yes.
of the tour. The Yesh Matirin, because there's those 20 or 30 that are still in the first pot. They are going to be Batal Barov,
Hmm.
Tarovet. So even though they're with that fish, we still have Rove. And why are we falling back to Rove instead of 60? Is it
Oh,
because
I
we
think
need
that
amino?
good.
Or
Yeah,
not
so that's going to be
necessarily.
an interesting question. It seems to be that those, at least Lichora, those 20 or 30, when they mix back in with the rest, will be Batel Barov, right? That you have, let's say, 100 fish, and 20 and 30 were with the Dag Tameh, and they'll mix back in and be Batel Barov, will be the idea. So
So you think he means when he pours it, when he finishes the pour?
that's my take. This is part of what's so hard about this is it's not,
Yes, the case is complicated is
yeah, it's not so clear. It's um,
because yeah, because then in the end he's going back and saying "Af al pi shenogin bahen hamayim." Also, is that Seifa? Is he sort of assuming it's not hot enough for real Bishul? It sounds like that seems built into his assumption.
yes, or he actually thinks that maybe an Isur Balua has to be on the fire, right? Just like in a cliché, it doesn't, or even maybe even a cliché Rishon off the fire, maybe Isur Balua doesn't spread, once it's off the fire. Maybe that's what he's thinking. Is again, these are all possibilities. It's again not clear. I kind of want, right? Hashem says to Moshe Rabbeinu, "Kasher ani moret chabahar," right, about the Mishkan. I showed you a picture. Where's my picture? I would really like a picture here. Uh, so, but all right, Jacob, please.
Yeah, I also am noting kind of like the with the ain with the ain chosram ba'osri, and there's an assumption being made about what the case is that the water is going to be, I guess, drained out. Where that's not. I mean, you could maybe construct it like a flow chart. Like, well, if this is what happens, then this would be the case. But I'm just noting, like from the what we're originally given, it's not clear if we're just pouring it all and collecting it in some other pot for draining the water.
Yeah, oh, I think, sorry, maybe I didn't make this clear. Maybe I wasn't clear in my head. I think there's two things going on. He's like, one, the fish themselves are not osir the other fish because there's beetle barov.
Mm-hmm.
And the water's not osir the fish because it has an isur balua and it's not interacting with the fish via bishul. It's interacting with the fish via, well, really being, irui. And he thinks that irui of something that is balua isur doesn't potentially osir,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's what's going on. Again, not so clear, but we'll look at the Beit Yosef and the Bach and see how they kind of plays out. The Beit Yosef is going to have a different scenario, and the Bach is going to try to play out the scenario that the tour brings. It's really the smug. This is all the smug,
Mm-hmm.
but we'll see how it all plays out. So let's go to the Beit Yosef. Let's see.
Joel,
Oh
just
yes.
quickly, as far as we know right now, what's the cloud? Is there a cloud that would save us in most situations? Or, is there something there?
Yeah, the problem is we don't have a claw yet from the
Well,
smug.
that's okay. So
Yeah,
that's really our hunt, right?
yes, yeah. We want to find and our klalot are going to come.
In other words, we don't want to solve it just on, well, this kind of Matthias, that kind of Matthias,
Yeah,
which it may come down to, but you really see if they can get a cloud. Okay, good.
yeah, and
Thank
we're
you.
we're looking for one. No, that's a great thank you, Rev Lennis, and it's hopefully what the other post game will give us on this. It's very I don't know if it's as strange, but the tour here the tour doesn't give us nor does the smug doesn't really give us a maskana. He gives a yesh osrim and yesh matirim. It's kind of
Mm-hmm.
interesting. And even I just the Ramah we'll see is very much seems to be matir, and the Shulchan Aruch is lechatchila oser, but then maybe matir b'diavad, and and we'll see that the Shach and the Taz have to kind of play out. Well, what do they actually think? What do we do, right, in this case? So, all right. So with that, let's go to the Beit Yosef. See how he reads this. Eitan, how you feeling?
Sure. כתב בספר המצוות, דגים קטנים שנתבשלו וכולי, יש אוסרים אפילו מכירו וזרקו וכולי. סימן קל"ב כתב כן סמג, ובמקום המים שכתב רבנו, פעמים כתוב שם חמים, וכך היא הגרסה הנכונה, וכן הוא בספר התרומה גם כן. So, right, right in Siman Kuflan Bet, they wrote this way. The Smog wrote this, said the same thing. And where it says Mayim in the tour, sometimes it's written there Mayim Chamim, and that's the right girsa. I think that's what we have,
Oh,
right?
I think actually I think the right gear, this is the way I'm reading it. The tour wrote Lafisha Me'are Ma'im Hachamim and Lifamim Besofai Rui, etc. So you're pouring out the water, and I think the Beit Yosef is going to read this as the Smog sometimes writes without the word Ma'im. When you're pouring out the Hamim, the hot fish, right? And that's going to be in his version. Right? We kind of saw that in the smog, the way the tour has the smog, you're pouring out the water but keeping the fish in the Kli Rishon. The Beit Yosef is going to have you pouring the fish and the water out together. So that's going to be the big difference. Yeah, Max.
Does it have to be that one and not where it says v'chozrin hamayim v'nogin l'chol hadagim?
It could be too. It was that I remember trying to read it that way, but it's let's see when we read what the Beit Yosef thinks it is, and maybe you're right, maybe I'm wrong. Let's take a look here. So, all right, Ethan, keep going.
Okay. ואף על פי שבסמג כתוב בסוף העניין לפי שהאיסור הנבלע ואין איסורו מחמת עצמו, אינו חוזר ונפלט ביבש, אלא על ידי מים שעמהם, מפרש רבנו דהכי כאמר, על ידי מים רותחים שעמהם, וכן הוא בספר התרומה. So even though in the smug it says sort of at the end of this that says it's because the isur that has been absorbed and it's an isur of balua, but it's not isur that's sort of intrinsic to itself, and therefore it can't go back and expel the isur into other things when it's yavesh unless there's water with them. The Tur explains that this is what he means, that it has to be. It can spread the isur through boiling water that's with them, and that's also what the Sefer Truma says.
Good. Okay. Keep going.
Ulefichach katav ki im al yedei bishul uviur hadvarim shedag.
I think that's why you wrote al yedei bishul, right? It's only through bishul, through my numbers, Mayin Rochim, that you can spread through to a yavesh thing an isur balua. So.
I see. Yeah, right. Therefore, it's right. That's why he says through bishul. Okay. Ubiur dvarim shedag tameh nimtza betamchui shehaosrim chosheshim shema kshe'ira hadagim mehailpas letamchui lo ira bebat echat legamre ve'achar shehitzchil le'arot shema nishar hadag tameh beilpas im me'at dagim u'me'at mayim ad she'im b'mayim v'dagim hahem shishim kenegdo v'nesru hem. וכשגמר העירוי על הראשונים שאירע בתחילה, נסרו גם הם מחמת אותם הדגים שנסתרו עם הדג הטמא האחרון, ועכשיו נגעו בהם בעודם חמים. ילקח אף על פי שאינו רואים בתמחוי 60 ויותר כנגד הדג טמא, הכל אסור.
Good.
Okay. And this is sort of the explanation of his words, which is that when you have a non-kosher fish, a dag tameh, that's within this sort of this vat of other fish, we wonder, or we're worried that maybe
I just want to make sure we're clear. The ilfas is the kli rishon, the tamchui, right, is the kli sheni here, right? This is what we're very clear. So I see. Yeah, just to give back, it seems to be you had the ilfas, you had the ilpas, right, the pot. And after you were done cooking, you poured it into the tamchui. And now you look in your tamchui, you're going, I'm like, oh my gosh, that fish right there is a non-kosher fish, right? That I have 100 fish or something. And now we're choshesh, right? What may have happened?
Because we're worried that, when you poured all of these fish from the ilpas into the tamchui, you didn't pour them all at once. And And after you started pouring it, maybe I guess you started pouring it then stopped. Maybe in the ilpas there's a dag tameh with just a few of the kosher fish in a little bit of water, and such that there isn't actually 60 now to cancel out this dag tameh, and they become asur. And then when you finish pouring you finish pouring that the ilpas into the tamchui which is now full of stuff that you poured in initially. Then the stuff in the tamchui becomes asur because of the fish that were in the ilpas when they became tameh.
Exactly.
And now when you pour what you poured from the ilpas in the tamchui is still hot, and therefore everything in the tamchui becomes tameh.
Yeah, but why? What is the method of transport here according to him?
It's through mayim chamim.
Uh,
That,
does he say that?
uh,
Nishtaru im hadag tameh ha'acharon ve'achshav nagu bahem.
oh, oh, oh.
It's the fish touching each other, sounds like. Right? He's
It's the
worried.
fish, right?
Yeah,
Okay,
he's worried
that
about
makes sense.
you have these Isur fish touching other, heter fish, and in that interaction, they're gonna make everything Asur. So kind of interesting. So it's yeah, because it's kind of I think the idea here is you've drained out the water, right, in the tamhui, and now you have poured, but you've got a little water still in the ilpas. That's gonna allow the transfer of Isur flavor, and then all these Isur fish are gonna go flying onto the heter fish, and they're gonna touch them, and then everything's gonna become Asur. Yeah, Reuven.
And this is the ta'am of the yesh osrin, and so according to them, Isra Balua does have the koach to sort of infect everything else,
It does. It seems to be.
even
Yeah.
with yavesh, even without
Mhm.
bishul.
Exactly. That seems to be what
Okay.
he's saying. So.
Okay, thank you. Just to clarify.
That's
Okay.
how I'm reading him, at least. We'll see how the Bach reads him. I think it's similar. Maybe that's where I got that from. So that it seems to be a fish-fish interaction that he's concerned with. So it's a little, right? Remember, you have to remember again, he doesn't hold Hanan, right? So he holds that, there's not this case where you now have, 20 Isurim, you now have 20 fish that are Balua with the Isur of that Isur fish. But if you think about it, I think this is what's going on. If I have each of the individual fish that are now Asur, I don't know how much they absorbed. It's like, like a Kli, I don't know how much it absorbed. And it touches a Heter fish when they all get mixed together and they touch, it's going to be Oseret, right? At the end of the day, even without Hanan. I think that's the mechanism going here. So,
But we don't know that he's saying the yesh osrin. He's not saying I hold the yesh osrin.
no, he's not. He's not
It would
saying
work better with Hanan, I want to say.
it works much. This whole thing becomes much easier if you hold Hanan, which the smog I believe does actually, and might be part of what's going on here. It's interesting that people are very committed to the smug at the end of the day. That they say, well, the smug's case must be that, like, the smug is actually bringing. I think the Yesh Osrin, if I'm not mistaken, is Rabbeinu Baruch, and the Yesh Matir. No, and the Yesh Matir is Rabbeinu Shimshon. But that he's getting, which are Tosafists. That's where he's getting this from. But they are committed to both sides of this. They're not willing to just say, oh, that's a case, that nice case, but we're not. This is something that we're committed to halachically as part of our tradition, and we're going to bring it down and then figure out how, in my whole framework of Isser and Heter, does this actually work on both sides. And one of the things we'll see that's going to be always, or we kind of already starting to see that's going to be confusing, is if you make a good enough argument on one side, you then have to justify the other. Like the other side kind of, it doesn't work anymore. And so you get stuck. And we're going to see that a few times here. So, okay, good. Eitan, keep reading. So now we've got these Isur. That's the Yesh Osrin.
I actually have to step out in 2 minutes, so I wonder if someone else can. I'm going to come back and you can call me again, but I don't want to have to cut off in the middle of my reading.
Max,
Sorry about that.
you're still here.
Sure.
We are, just to remind people, we're in the Beit Yosef. I have to find it again. And we're at the V'yoter Keneged Hadag Tameh Hakol Asur V'dat HaMatirim, if people can find that.
Okay. V'das hamatirin mishum de'afilu im timtzei lamar shnishtayiru ma'adagim be'ilpas v'dag tameh binehem v'ne'esru osam hadagim machmato ein bekach klum. שאותם הדגים הם מסבדלים בדגים שאירה ראשונים חד בתרי, דאין להם דין בריה שלא להסבטל מאחר שאין איסורן אלא מחמס בלה.
Mhm.
So, in terms of the Mako position, even if there are still, even if you're doing two pours and there are still some fish in the pot, and the daktame is in that second group, and that second group becomes all usser, um, that they he really says they actually don't become usser. That never gets off the ground because it's all um, it had already been batel through the dagim that used to be in the pot that you poured out before, um, in terms of chad betray, and also you can't even clean beria because it's only iser balua, not atzmo.
It's interesting you say. I think there's two ways. You could say that they are mitbat because they were already mitbatel and they can't come back and do it. Although
Hmm.
I don't actually read it that way. It's interesting. It's emekachlum sheotam dagim he mitbalim bedagim she'ira rishonim. I think that he means maybe after you pour all of them together, chad betray, and not. But you're saying that they were already batel, and then and he can't be choser v'neor essentially, right? That's the way you're reading him.
Uh-huh. I
He's
thought,
I know I
yeah,
saw that reading somewhere. I can't remember where I saw it, but I did see that reading somewhere that it's the Jose Veneer kind of. It's like once you're Batel, you're Batel. End of story.
right,
That's
right. So you're saying that the other way of reading it is that they become batel when the second pour happens.
yes. Him. I think because he didn't say that they were neat batlin or that
Hmm.
it's in the participle form. So I think they become Batel once
Hmm.
you mix them all together, right? But Agim Shira Rishonim Chad Betray. Yeah. So with the other ones, and not that they were already Batel with them. So.
But then how would you get around the fact that the second group became usher through the Dag Tameh?
Because they became Asur, they're Isur fish, but they cannot spread their Isur because it's Balua without water. And now they're Batel in a majority at the end of the day. So
Oh, I see.
yeah.
You're saying because the first group was 30 and the second group was 20 or something
Exactly.
like that.
Let me know. So there is an assumption there, by the way, that with the pour that happens, um, well, I mean, I guess it's one of two things. Either the fish ended up with in the first pour, and then it was just in a cliche need, so maybe nothing happened, or it stayed in the machbat or in the ilpas, but it was osir, but not enough fish that are in there to be osir. You could imagine there is a scenario where there's, I don't know, you do the first pour, 20 fish come out and 40 fish remain. And then in the next pour, right, that you have 40 fish that are asur and they would be osir. So there seems to be some sort of klal that we do assume that um, if we're going to assume that it remained in the ilpas, we assume it remained with the minority kind of thing here, which is interesting. Uh, which is actually, well, I want to play that out. There's a principle we have since we're looking for a klal, which people haven't brought up yet, but is sitting also in the background. And I should have brought this. When I have a group of things, some of them asur, some of them mutar, and I take one by one each of them out. What do we say? What have I taken out potentially? We haven't done this yet. This is kufyud.
This
Cool.
this is
Go ahead, Max.
uh you can assume that each singular one that you're eating is the mutter one.
Good. Kol de parish miruba parish. Right. Everything I took out came from the road. The flip of that is what's called kavua, which I assume that everything is, kemechsa, that it's 50-50, and therefore it could be either. But when I'm pouring, it's not what we call kavua. It's not stationary. It's moving. So I can maybe assume that all the ones that I poured out were from the rove or something like that. So it's okay. We'll come back to an opposite claw coming through. I don't have any great solutions to any of this. I think this is as much a way to get us to think about all these ideas that come into these questions as it is to give us an answer. Ori, please.
Well, and one of the interesting claim that I think sort of comes out of what he was just saying is even just not in a specific case, but when you have Isser Balua in these similar fish, you need to remember that you can go back to rove because you're really min bimino. Even though the balua was she'eno mino, the
Ah,
fish itself that we're not going to add together, at least in this reading of the Matirin, is very much a mino with his friends.
good. That's a huge question, actually. Is a fish that is boleh or anything is this boleh isur, is it still considered min b'mino or not?
It seems to be implied in the way the Beit Yosef explains Da'at Matirin.
Good. Yes, this is a big question that comes up here of the data material. Does that mean that because you think that even if you have an isur below and you're still the same mean as the heter or not? It's not 100% clear. I think if if you go batar shma. Definitely, maybe. Yeah, maybe I would say definitely, maybe, right? I don't know. It's if you go batter tam, it doesn't taste the same. Um,
It's a great test case for Hanan because Hanan would mean Na'aset nevela. This fish has now become what? The treif type of fish. Let it act like She'eno mino.
yeah.
I'm
So
sort of conflating two things there, but I think it's sort of implied here.
yeah, it's a good question. It's a good question. Why is this Batel Barov in the first place? Is it just because it's a mean baby no case? It could be when he says rove, he means in Bashishim because there's so many fish against it that that we're talking about a huge quantity. I don't think so because it doesn't seem to be the numbers we're talking about here, but it's possible. So, and we have seen a couple places where somebody explains Batel Barov really means 60 and not rove. So it's possible also. Okay, good. Let's do the egg case that also comes from the smug, and then we'll do the Bach. I'm looking at my time. I think we'll get to do at least the Bach also. Josie, pick us up in the Beit Yosef.
Sure. וכתוב עוד בסמ"ג, where the quote is, אמנם ביצים שנתבשלו ונמצא באחד מהם אפרוח או דם, הכל אסור דאין רגילות לבשל ביצים כל כך ביחד, שיהא 20 ביצים או 3 שנאסרו בטלים בטהרו ברוב של היתר.
Good.
So the smog brings this other case of the egg, which the Shulchan Aruch, spoiler alert, he runs with this.
Yeah.
Torah sort of doesn't even bother with. It says if you have an egg with a chicken or a blood spot, that's all of the eggs then become asur because you're not usually cooking so many eggs, right? And so you don't have enough eggs to be mavatel shishim, and certainly you usually have you 20 or maybe 30, and it's not enough to be mavatel.
Good. So there will it is a case though, as we'll see for his solution to this, it does seem that maybe with the water you would have enough to be batel the egg, right? While it's still cooking. It's once the water's drained out though, you lose that potentially. And so you have that one egg is oser, the other eggs with a little bit of water, right? And as you pour out the eggs, and then those eggs come back and jump onto the other eggs, and now you've got I don't know, 10 and 10 or something like that, or whatever it may be. But you can't get yourself out of this situation.
This is another Hanan case or like a contagious novela case.
Maybe not. It doesn't even have to. Contagious novela might be better than Hanan here. I don't know that Hanan is operative. So let's keep going and see how his solution, because this is going to be important to understand this case. Okay.
לכן טוב להמתין עד שיסתנן קודם שיוצאים מן המים שנתבשלו שם, ואם רוצה למהר, ישים מים צוננים עליהם לצוננם. So the solution he has is to wait till it cools off, and if you're impatient and you need them now, you add cold water to them to cool them off. תחילה.
It seems right if he's saying that he thinks that with the water and the eggs it is batel, right? The afroch
adds to the 60.
Exactly. It's just once the water's out of there, that's when you're going to run yourself into problems. So, okay, but keep going.
ואף על פי כן לא היה מצריך להגיע המחבת.
להגיל, like הגלה.
להגיל, I'm sorry. להגיל המחבת כי בשביל ספק כזה. So you don't actually have to you don't have to kosher your pot, right?
Yes.
Uh, because this is all we have a suffix here.
Mhm.
אין לחוש שנשארו לבסוף, אלא העומד המחבת בחזקת כשרות.
Yeah, probably Hamed, like stand up, or it's like an imperative. Yeah.
So we kind of assume that you're pouring off. You might be pouring off the treif one, and what's left in the pot is assumed to be kosher.
Well, good. I think right. I'm gonna be very clear, very particular about this. Right. There's no worry that the nisharu, that the there were the eggs that were left over with the isur. We don't worry about that. And you keep the pot on its. What's the chazaka? When you see that pot before you poured anything, it had a chazaka of
It was kosher.
kosher, right? And you can't remove that chazaka with just a safek, right? In safek motzi midei vadai, right? And we have a principle, right, that you don't remove something from its vadai status because of a safek. Same thing here, right? I'm using different words than he's using. But here it's hamed hamachbat becheskat kashrut. But similar idea is we keep stuff with their status until we have vadai evidence that it doesn't hold it. Now it's really interesting. I mean, the Ramah's kind of going to go there, right? That well, why don't we say that about the eggs? Right? The eggs were in a status of kashrut. Like, why don't we hold them that way? Why just the pot? Um, Interesting question. So. Okay, keep going.
שהייתם מתחילה ועוד היה,
Go
שהייתם,
ahead, yeah. Haytam Mitchila was part. You were fine. You didn't need that. So.
ועוד היה אומר רבנו שמשון, טעם אחר, להתיר שיש לנו לומר דאיסורא ברובה, איתי דנמרינן בזבחים, so that Rabbeinu Shimshon is going to bring another reason to permit this, like he brings in Zvachim. Hilchach ein
Oh,
litfilot.
wait, hold on. Let's try. Isura beruba ita. We can assume that the Isur is always amongst the rove, right? So we can assume that it wasn't the Isur didn't remain with the 20 or 30, but really was in the majority. And therefore, if the Isur was,
So it's so bitul barov.
yeah,
It's always bitul barov. The
yeah, I
Isra
mean,
follows along with everything.
exactly. And therefore, but
Hilchach ein litlut shebesof ha'irui im me'at mayim nishar. So you don't have to you don't have to worry about this case where there might be you pour things out and there's a little bit left and there's not enough to be mavatel and a little bit, and then you end up with this sort of contagious nevela.
exactly, right? We don't assume that when we had a ratio of 60 to 1 against an Isur, that at some point in my process I lost my ratio, right? We can assume that the Isur always remains. This is a klal we get from Zvachim. It's like one place in the Gemara, but this is Rav Landis asked us for what are general principles. So this is a principle, right? Isur beruva ite, right? The Isura stays with the rov. And the other principle is that something can stand on its cheskat kashrut. Okay, so we have some principles here to help us both make the pot not needed to be kosher, not needing to have hagala, and maybe even to be Rabbi Shimshon may even in a lot of these cases just say the whole thing is mutar. We never worry about this case because we just assume that the Isra stayed with the rov.
Question.
Yeah.
So what was the
Okay.
hava amina to make the pot, the machvat, not kosher? What was the hava amina that the bloodied egg touched it, right? So how does he get over that? They're all mixed up, so you assume that this bloodied egg among the 20s somehow touched the machvat. So I don't understand how he gets over that.
Because the assumption is that there were always, or at least there could have been always a 60 to 1 ratio against the bloody egg. And so the pot was absorbing at the end of the day, Isur, Heter, right? Not Isur. It's only if the ratio gets lost, right? If you dump a bunch of eggs out and now you've got a few eggs with some water, that then the egg can be oser the pot, right? And you're right, 60 to 1 again. Yes, we did that, right? We did the eggs need actually 61 because maybe eggs are different size according to the Rambam. But other with the water, right? With the water, you need 60, right? Because it's not just all eggs here, potentially.
So the 60 works not only towards the other eggs, but also towards the machvat, right?
Yes, exactly, right? 'Cause it's the same thing, right? If I cook I don't know, I have soup and I drop some chaylev into my soup accidentally, but there's a 60 to 1 ratio, then there's no isur anymore. So,
Okay.
so
So the so the question is why that silver bullets, the Batul Barov, why was there reluctance? Why was there the Shammai reluctance of using it, you know, based all the time?
yeah,
But so, so
And
you have to come to the conclusion, I think, is that the klal remains, but the klal seems counterintuitive. It's a halacha klal, but you got three eggs, and one's no good. If you would ask the normal goy walking down the street, he wouldn't necessarily want to take those odds, including to say that that third egg, which is poisonous or will give you a tummy ache or whatever, at least he won't take that. But we have that cloud. So the cloud, the silver bullet is kind of my question from the beginning. The silver bullets only used when they just can't beat the Matthias. I mean, try to, but they just can't. That's what I think.
yeah, it's no, I think Rav Lenis is, you're right that a klal helps us, like we're in an after the fact situation. We're trying to determine what the reality was, and we can use the klal, but the klal doesn't mean that the reality that we're afraid of didn't happen at the end of the day. And it's just we hold it. This is one of the hard things about a klal like this is, we're willing to rely on this, but it may not be true. And if it's not true, then we have to be a oser. And
I would say it's legally putter.
you're right. Yeah,
But the difference between Matthias and legality.
yes.
So the I think all the way through the our study of this halacha, these not just this theme, but all of them, is can you establish kalalim, and when do you have to rely on it? When don't you have to rely on it?
Yeah.
If you don't have to rely on it, then the probability factor of halacha working is very good. But when you have to rely on it because there's no way out, well, what the heck? What's going on? In other words, the confidence in the kolim uh, fall apart.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
No, no, I think, and I think we've seen this in even, like we have a klal kli sheni eno mevashel, we have the Rashba says, well, wait a second, what if it's really hot? Right? There are, it is really, I like that the limits between, or the kind of the interaction between, we have a legal principle, but we also have a mitzias, and sometimes it makes us nervous to be makil because of that klal, and same thing with like batel barov. We're going to see, right? You throw out one of them though, even though it's batel, right? It's because it's as Rav Lenin said, if I had three eggs and one of them was poisonous. Someone would say, I'm not going to just be like, oh, well, it's, but tell the majority. What are you talking about? All right, this is a good time to take a break. And we'll come back. We'll do the Bach, and we have a lot to do. It's, um, I want to do the Bach because I think he's a nice kind of explanation, or at least his version explanation of both the Torah and the Beit Yosef. He does give us the halacha what he thinks is the halacha at least. We can take a look at him as well, and then hopefully we'll have some time to do Siv Bet. But if not, I'll cover some of the Shulchan Aruch itself in Chazara for people who come. We should all come to Chazara, usually I put the recordings up too. All right. Bach, כתב בספר המצוות, דגים קטנים וכולי, לפי כשמערה מים חכמים וכולי. All right, let's see. Who hasn't read? Shammai, you want to read some Bach for us?
Okay.
You have to do the whole thing. I'm going to split it up. Don't worry.
Okay. All right, yes, long. ביאור הדברים, זה לאחר שנתבשלו הדגים, מהרי המים חמים מן המחבת לתוך כלי אחר, בלי שום דגים. ומערה כל המים כולן שבתוך המחבת לתוך כלי אחר, ולא נשאר שום רוטב במחבת. So after the fish are cooked, then you pour the hot water into the second kli, that without any fish, and then you pour all the water in the machvat to another kli, and that empties the machvat from any rotev.
Exactly. This is a way of draining, right? Instead of put it into a colander, you kind of pour all the water out into like a bowl, and then you dump the water from the bowl, and then you can maybe dump the fish in there if you want. So.
ואם כן, זה האוסרין, שמא בסוף העירוי נשאר הדג טמא עם 20 או 30 דגים עם מעט מים, ונאסרו כולם כי המים חמים מוליכין. מוליכין אז הטעם בכולן בתוך המחבת, ואין בהם 60 לבטל. So the reason the Ostrim, the people, those who prohibit it, is because at the end of the pouring, you don't have the 60 anymore, the 60, the ratio, the 60 ratio, because you only have 20 or 30, and then because there's still a little bit of water, then the water the water is molich the isur of the tameh to all the others.
Mm-hmm. Good. This is right. He essentially is imagining a scenario where the fish have kind of split up in this pot. Is the way I'm seeing it, but we'll see. He's going to keep going with this. So, okay. ואחר כך.
ואחר כך, כשמערה גם אותן מעט מים ולא נשאר שום מים במחבת, נגעו אותן 20 או 30 דגים שנאסרו בשאר כל הדגים שבמחבת בעודם חמין. What was this?
שאר הדגים שבמחבת בעודם חמים, בכלי ראשון.
בכלי ראשון. שבו המחבת, וכיוון שנגעו חמין בכלי ראשון זה לזה, נאסרו כולם בקליפה.
That's the big kicker right there, right? What happens, according to him, you've poured all the water out. As you're pouring the water out, sorry, Sean, I'm just going to summarize a little bit for you. I know you know this, but there's still a little bit of water in. Some of this is he hasn't said this yet, but he's imagining. Remember the scenario we have in the Mishnah, Tipat Chalav, in Chulin in the 8th chapter, right? You have and the whole dispute between the Ri and Rashi. Some of the pieces of meat are outside the rotev, and some of the pieces of meat are in the rotev. This is what he thinks is going on, right? There's some fish are, if you think about it, when you drain like fish or think about draining pasta, the water is kind of at an angle. Some of the pasta is outside the water. Some of it's in the water still as you're pouring it out. He says, well, wait, what if the dag tameh is in the water? Then then the water is going to make all the fish in the water become asur. You have fish on top. All the water's poured out. They're still in this kli rishon, this machabat, right? And now there's no water, but the fish that are tameh are going to touch other fish, and they're going to be osur them. How much?
Only beklipa.
Klipa, because it's yavish, right? There's no water. That's what's going on. That's the Yeshua stream. It's an incredible, like not only explanation, but also kula in some ways. Right? We were thinking the fish were asur, right? I mean, if Kedei Klipa is asur also until you take the Klipa off, but it's fixable to some extent. And so a minimum of isur. It's you can, each of the fish, you could peel it. Maybe I imagine if you take the skin off, you might be enough, right? And you just eat them. You could probably eat the innards of the fish without a problem.
But this is only because there's no water there anymore.
Exactly.
Right? But if you had a clear case where the water still touches everything, then you couldn't say Kedei Klipa.
Good. He's going to get to that. He's going to get to the Beit Yosef case, and that's going to be a bigger problem. But I do wonder. I don't know if this is true. This is like what I would call this bad speculation, but I'm going to do it anyway. So what's going on here might be different people have different reality of how do they drain water from things when they cook. But I think what we're getting nicely here is the way you drain is actually important, right? This is, remember, the smug said the solution for eggs is to cool and let it cool down, or just pour cold water into it as opposed to pouring the water out. Which I don't know, anybody here, this is the way I was taught to boil eggs, was that you actually have like an ice bath ready for it. It's not just from a kashrut reason, actually just is better for the boiling. And you just dump the ice water on the eggs very quickly.
So what you're saying is the question is whether we've all had an assumption that pouring down is one flow, but now it's a stop action camera, and and the action stops at different times. It just
Yeah.
stops, even if it's for a fraction of a second.
Hmm. So yeah,
Okay.
I mean, I know that when I keep going back to pasta because it's the thing I most commonly drain, but it's you don't pour all the water out at once, and and as you're pouring it out, right, there's separation is happening within the original pot. So it's and it's a case where you can't tell when you're doing it, like where you didn't know there was duck tame in there to begin with. And I this is one thing actually this is like a good time to say something about this too, right? Hanan has been also lurking in the background. There is, and if I think we saw this, there's an opinion that Kuf Gimel, that Hanan, even according to the Ramah, I think the Ramah says this, he doesn't hold Hanan until you know, right? So if you didn't know they were mixed together, and then Hanan, and then they kind of got separated and remixed, then Hanan wouldn't be applicable in such a case potentially. So another reason why maybe nobody's bringing up Hanan in any of these. So um, okay, so now we have
I'm sorry for I keep on trying to get
yeah.
the so therefore the Isur of Hanan, the impact Isur Hanan is really on the Pula and not on the I don't know. It's on the Maisa, the Pula, but not on well, I would say it, not on the Nagia, just to use a term. Not sure what term. It was a Nagia.
Yeah.
It's
So and also the Deah is
it's not chemistry.
no, Hanan is not a
It's
chemistry.
not
Yeah.
so it's not chemistry. It's not biology. It's that is the Hanan was established in
Legality.
order that you should watch your behavior.
Hmm. Yeah. And so if you don't know that something's
Bashita, yeah.
if you don't know it's an Isur, you can't say Hanan yet until
Mhm.
after you know it's an Isur. So
But all of that you're talking about Shari Surin.
for Ishari Serm, yeah, it's
Very
well, yeah, Hanan. We're not in Basar, but obviously in these cases we're not in a Basar B'chalav case at all. So which is what that would make this all more complicated in a lot of ways. So uh, okay, all right. So Shammai, you're doing great here. Let's remember where we are. We said Kulam Beklipa De'afa Mutarim. Keep
דף
going.
המותרים שהיו חוץ למים נאסרו בקליפה.
Mhm.
ולפי זה נאסרו כולם בתוך המחבת שהוא כלי ראשון. וכך כתב במרדכי.
Yeah, he says that in Chulin in Perak Ela Trefot. Right, so that's where that appears. Okay.
ולפי זה ניחא דכתב הסמ"ג שכשמערה מים חמין ולא הזכיר שמערה דגים, דמיירא דמערה הרוטב בלי שום דגים כלל.
Hmm.
So this explains the smog that when he talks about the pouring, it's just the water and nothing and no fish. You're not pouring any of the fish together with the water.
Exactly.
וגם ניחא דכתב הסמ"ג בספר התרומה, ואין חוזרין ואוסרין השאר שבמחבת, דלא איירי הכא, אלא בדגים שהיו חוץ למים במחבת. אם חזרו ונאסרו חמין בתוך המחבת, דדעת האוסרין, הווי תמא דנאסרים כולם בקליפה כדפרישית. ודעת המתירין,
Okay,
כיוון...
let's stop there, and then we'll do the Dat Hamatirim. So.
Okay, so he's trying to explain the smog. The reason that they is because the fish were outside of the water. They so the water can't molich the isor, and אם חזרו ונאסרו חמין בתוך המחבת.
Yeah, so really the question is, right, if those that were outside the water where the water didn't spread the Isur to them, if they come back and um, uh, they become Asur, right, within this original pot, right? That's what's going on here.
Yeah.
So, and that he says that fits the language better here, because right, it's he says because he never mentions pouring the fish out. He only mentions, of course, this is the girsa of the tour. He only mentions pouring out the water. So, okay.
Again, he mentioned they're only asur b'klipa.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
Then that's why they're all messing. Now, of course, the one problem with this is the smog never said klipa.
Yeah, I
right?
was just gonna say that. Yeah,
Yeah,
he
that's
inserts that into the smog, whereas you don't find that at all in the smog itself.
yeah. It's I think on the flip side of this, if I remember correctly, the Shach goes the other way when he says the people who say it's mutar, they mean it's only mutar because it's only a Kedei Klipa. So it's mutar, but it's not really mutar. He's going, it's the Kedei Klipa is the crutch to get out of all of this, either to lesor or leatir. But Ori, go ahead.
Well, it occurred to me maybe there's an assumption that the klipa is when you're dealing with small fish, maybe it's effectively usser because now I have to figure out even a smaller measurement and it's small fish. That's actually been Farash in the case.
Yeah, that's a good, at least when we get to Cadet Natila, definitely, I think then you probably lose a lot of the fish. Cadet Klipa, maybe
Could
you
be
can
the skin,
peel it.
yeah.
It's you can, if you ever, go to a fish market and you buy, a whole fish. I like to do this, and then you have them, you watch them cut it and all that stuff. They don't take very much off, but they do. They peel off the skin. So. Um, they think I'm crazy at the fish markets here because I asked them to see the skin and all sorts of. I have all sorts of weird requests of them. But they like me, but they think I'm weird. So what can I say? Um, okay, let's see the dot materin here.
לדעת המתירין, כיוון דהירה כל המים ולא נשאר שום רוזב במחבת, אף אגב שכבר נאסרו 20 או 30 שבסוף העירוי קודם שאירה כל המים, מכל מקום, לסוף כשאירה כל המים והתערבו ביחד כל הדגים שבמחבת, בטלים ברוב דגים כשרות, כיוון שהתערובת היה יבש ביבש, בלי רוטב, ולא נאסרו כלל, אפילו קליפה לא צריך.
Keep going. לפי.
שלפי שאיסור הנבלע ואין איסורו מחמת עצמו, אינו חוזר ונבלע ביבש כל עיקר.
Good.
So those who are matir, they are of the opinion of that it's mutar because once there's no water involved, so there's no halacha of the isur, and it's only avesh biavesh. So even though you then they got mixed up again, it was only they were not usher by in and of themselves inherently. It was only that they were because they were balua, so they can't make the whole mix of fish asur.
Good. I just want to summarize this because now we have the Matirim, Yesh Osrim. Yesh is a debate according to the Bach about Yavesh things that are hot and they touch each other. How much are they Oser? And he says it's really a debate of if it's an Isur Balua, is it Oser Kedei Klipa or is it not Oser at all? Right? Again, right? He seems to think if you have hot things, no water, they touch each other. If the he's maybe we could say everyone would agree that if it's asur machmat atzmo, it's oser kedei klipa. But the question is, if it's an isur balua, does it even go that far? Or is it possible that the balua shabo with no water and no shamnunit is not able to actually even leave the fish itself at that point, or leave the object itself? And that's the yesh matirin. So he's different axis completely. It's really a question here, not of what happened, but a question of how potent is Isur Balua without water.
Why is Rove important? Why did he also mention Rove? You're saying like Isur Balua touches another fish to fish.
Yeah.
There really wouldn't be any transfer, Yavesh Yavesh.
Good. There wouldn't be any transfer, but on the other hand, if they're Rove Isur, right? If you have 60 Asur fish and 20 het there, it doesn't then they're all Asur because then it's
Well, they're all Asur because you don't know which is which, but not because of transfer.
yeah, he doesn't say that it's Batel Baro. He's talking about the physical objects now, because now we're back to a case of well, now we have like 100 fish. We know 20 of them are Asur. They didn't spread the Isur to any others, and we can now eat any of the fish because we now have Bitul Barov of the solid objects. Or did I answer that question the way you?
Yeah, I just feel like the language is actually not at first glance so different than the Beit Yosef, but I see your point. Because of the order he says it. B'telim berov dagim sherot, kevan shatarovet haya yavesh biyavesh bli rotev.
Yeah. So in other words,
so yeah, I see what you're saying. So there now no transfer is happening anymore, and we have a normal case of batal berov without transfer.
Yes. So, and again, also remember, our whole thing of mim b'mino, which has bitul barov, right? We say that derabanan, you need 60, but not in dry cases because unless you come to cook them, right? That's our fear. But they're already cooked, right? So we're not worried about that anymore. So you can actually rely on min b'mino is batel barov in this case. So we'll see this, right? If you have, assuming forget chaticha l'rialit kabed and all that stuff, right? If you have three steaks, one of them is not kosher and you can't recognize them and they're all the same mean, right? It's batel because as long as they're already cooked, right? If you're going to cook them later, then that could be a problem. But already cooked steaks, assuming again, chaticha l'rialit kabed is another problem. So I don't know, maybe it's bad steak or something, um, but. All right. Now he's gonna, where did I want to go with this? How are we doing on time? Let's take a look. All right. He's gonna prove it. All right. His whole thing, we're gonna skip it actually. Unfortunately, is that he's gonna prove this whole Kedei Klipa, or maybe not Kedei Klipa, from the Tipat Chalav Mishnah. And how both sides understand that. Essentially, if you remember correctly, I'll say it outside. In the case of where you have a tipat chalav that falls on a piece of basar, it's outside the rotev, and you don't cover the pot, you don't stir the pot, right? Not all the forces get marshaled against it, and we actually say in the Gemara that piece is not osir the other pieces. And he says, well, that seems to fit the yesh matirin. What about the yesh osrin? Well, they say when the Gemara says it's not osir the other, it's not osir completely. It is osir kedei klipa. It must be. And so that's the debate about whether or not two Yaveshim things are osir one another or not. It can be, or one can be osir the other. Okay, that's his reading. I want everyone to skip down to, he quotes the Sefer Truma and Siman Lamed Hey, and he says Kidei Brishit, and then he says Aval HaBeit Yosef. Is actually make it even easier. He says Nami Muchach b'Mordechai v'Shari, and he quotes the Mordechai and Chulin, or he cites the Chulin v'Shari Dura Siman Nun Aleph from the Shari Dura Sefer Truma Siman Lamed Hey Kidei Prishit, like I explained, and then I want to pick up at Aval HaBeit Yosef. Yes, good. Kalev, yeah,
Okay, I can take a stab at it.
please.
אבל ביוסף פירש דמרי דאירם הדגים מן המחבת לתמחורים בשתי פעמים וכשימן שמה כשאירם תחילה הדגים נשאר הדג טמא במחבת עם מעט דגים ומעט מים וכו'. The tema,
Explain that. It's a good place, and then we'll get him to attack the Beit Yosef.
Okay, so the Beit Yosef said that we're dealing with a case where they're pouring out the fish from the pot into a separate container two times, and we're concerned that perhaps the initial pouring of the fish, that in that there remained the unkosher fish in the original pot in the Kli Rishon with a little bit of the other fish and the water, a little bit of water.
Mm-hmm. Good. That was what we explained. I realized actually, I'm looking back the base when he says "Umakoma mayim shekatav Rabbeinu pamayim katuv sham chamim." I think it might be both times he writes water. It's not pamim. I was reading some sources, but it might be both times he writes water. It really should just say chamim is the way he's understanding. I think that's actually a better read of the Beit Yosef there. But okay, so he's like we said though, but we explained the Beit Yosef case that way. That is you're doing two pours, and two pours of the fish here is really what we're worried about with the water, and that's the concern. Okay, so now he's gonna and that you have some of the Isur fish with a little bit of water and a few of the fish left in the Kli Rishon, the Machabat. Okay, that's the concern. Okay, so keep going. So he's gonna attack the Beit Yosef now.
I really
want you to yell it out. The Tema Gedolah, right? This is like, why? Yeah, okay. Go ahead, Caliph.
ולפי פירושו דאירה הדגים עם הרוטב מן המחבת על התמחוי בשתי פעמים. אחר כך פשיטה,
אם כן.
פשיטה דנסרים כל הדגים על ידי שמערה, בסוף הדגים נשארים עם המים ונסרו מדג הטמא שביניהם, ואז ניסו גם הדגים שעירם תחילה בתמחוי על ידי הרוטב המערב, בסוף דמוליך האיסור, בשעה עירוי כל הדגים דאירו ככלי ראשון
Lechumra.
לחומרה.
Yeah, he says, wait a second, right? Im Kipshita Dinasrim called that game. It's obvious everything in the Beit Yosef scenario is Asur, right? Why? Because you Arab is Sofa the Gimashrim Imamayim Shinesrumi Dagatame. You have this water that has been infected from this Dagtameh that was left in the Kli Rishon, and then it gets poured on all the permitted dagim that are in the Tamchui, that are in the Kli Sheni. And what do we say about Irui Kli Rishon? Ke Kli Rishon L'chumra. And that's Oser everything. And he says, everyone would agree about that. Beit Yosef, I don't understand. Your case, you've got Yesh Matirin. Well, Yesh Matirin, nobody would ever say such a thing. Now, of course, it relies on the idea that Irui Kli Rishon Ke Kli Rishon, right? But anyway, keep going. Uvachai Gavne.
ובהי גבנה ליכה מען דשארי, אלא מטעם אחר, הוא דשארי בעניין זה דספירה להם, דלא מחזיקים איסורה.
Isura. Yeah. Okay, well, we'll explain what he means in a second here, but just explain that for a second. Tell him if he wants some help. All right, I'll help out here. He says there's nobody who would permit this, right? Except, right? Because remember that was the Beit Yosef when he explained the Yesh Matirin, right? He explained it, but that even that there's a few the dagim are become batel with the other ones that were poured in first. And he didn't say anything about the water. But what about the water? The water is Oser. And so he didn't give the proper reason for Yesh Matirin. But there is a reason, he says, right, for Yesh Matirin. And it's this principle of Lo Machsekinan Isura. We don't kind of like we don't hold fast to an Isur. We don't presume, that's the right word. We don't presume an Isur, right? He's going to explain why, right? Because remember, this whole thing is presuming a reality, a Metzias, right, that happened during the pour. He says, why are we assuming that that's true? So here we go, right? What's he going to say? What would be machzekina nisura? Litlot. Actually, I'll read for a minute here if that's okay. Litlot diadaga tameh haya besof eirui bisman shaloya lisham shishim kenegdo. Right? That you would hang yourself on, you would rely on or assume that the forbidden fish was left in the Kli Rishon, with a few fish at the time of pouring it out, right? When there weren't 60 against it. Right? You're assuming that the Isur remained in the pot. Why are you assuming that? Why don't just assume that it was in the first pour, right? And didn't remain with the water and was able to infect everything else. Keshaya shishim kenegdo, right? And there would have 60 against it, maybe in the first pour. There's a lot of fish coming out. Maybe there is water, but you have 60, right? It's not the stuff that's stuck on the bottom that gets poured out last. Ukedichtav behagaot Mordechai b'shem tashbatz. Tashbetz, Siman, such and such, V'Isur, V'Heter. He's going to bring everybody who says this. V'nei b'Sefer HaMitzvot Shevi Rabbeinu Katuv Dedat HaMatirin Eno Mitam Zeh Elo Mishum D'Isur Nivla Eno Chazer Nivla B'Avesh. And he says, and the smog which was brought by the tour didn't give the explanation to Lo Machzikin on Isura. So that can't be the reason, and therefore the Beit Yosef got it all wrong. But what I said was right. Beit Yosef. That works. Mine is the easy read. The Beit Yosef, it doesn't fit the explanation for the Yesh Matirin. There is a reason for Yesh Matirin in your case, but you have it wrong. This is the Bach's takedown of the Beit Yosef here. So, okay. He's going to give you the halacha, and he essentially plays it out. I'll just say it out that in his case, right? The case where you pour the water out and the fish remain. He says, Rotav Asirim, Kivan deleka hacha ela chadas feka, right? Shiva lo hayat mebesof irui. So sorry, make sure I have this right. Oh no, so that's the Beit Yosef's case. He says there's only one safek, and therefore you should hold that leisur. And but yeah, but you don't have to kasher the pot because you hold it in the chazaka. But when he says later, he says aval kashirak kol rotev bilchud. If you look further down, he says if you dump out all the water by it to get together by itself, l'toch kli ve'achar kach yirak kol dagim l'toch hakera. Umatzah sham dag tameh ein lesor elotan dagim shenogim l'dag tameh b'makom shematzau ve'shar mutarim. Right? He says there it's only the fish touching the dag tameh that you have to. So if you pour out the water, all of it, and then you pour out the fish, and then you find the dag tameh, you just have to remove the fish that were around the dag tameh, and not not anything more. But if you do it the Beit Yosef way, he's oser hakol. That's how he paskins at the end of the day. Okay. All right, let's go with that to the Shulchan Aruch.
Can I just clarify one thing?
Yeah.
So it was interesting to me that his Yesh Matirin was sort of like there's suffix in the pour, and the suffix in the pour is where you can get the idea that the lo machzikin an isura.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
that's your only in. Now, do we have
exactly.
another rationale for the Beit Yosef thinking that a little bit of water wouldn't transfer isur? And is it chanah?
I actually think that the Beit Yosef may actually agree with that, and that he just thinks that the Beit Yosef may think the scenario is correct, and the explanation for it that's given in the Smag in the Torah is wrong. Right? That's Rav Linus?
No, I was just Emachziking Isur is always, I shouldn't say always, but it seems to me always referring to deciding that a certain Metzias exists. So, in other words, this case is it's a cloud about Metzias and not a cloud on, halachic formulas, halachic logic. When do you apply halachic logic? Now, no, it's here is when you apply a principle, the silver bullet, on a Metzias Smiya situation.
Yeah.
Can't always have chashashos.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I mean, look, again, I think this is what's playing out here is, it's we know what the beginning was, we know what the end of the scenario is, we don't know what happened in between, and we have to have something to rely on to understand the in between. So before we go to, I might as well do this. Before we go to the Shulchan Aruch, let's go to the Shulchan Aruch, but not where we're getting, not Kuf Zayin. Everyone go to Kuf Yud Aleph for a second. I don't think we're doing Kuf Yud Aleph this year. So go to Kuf Yud Aleph in the Shulchan Aruch, Seif Zayin. I just want to play out one thing that's
Shulchan Aruch.
Say Shulchan Aruch, Kuf Yud Aleph, Seif Zayin. I'll read when people get there for a minute, and then you can stop hearing my voice in a minute after that. Okay. Hayukan shtek shel heter. Right? You have two containers of permissible things. V'nafal isur letoch achat mehen. And one of them has isur fall into it. Ve'ein yadua le'ezo nafal. You don't know which one it fell in. Ve'ein b'achat k'dei levatel isur. Right? And each one doesn't have enough to do bitul. Ve'yesh b'shtehem k'dei levatlo. Shtehen mitzarfot levatlo. You can combine the two, not physically combine, although Ramah will say they have to eventually be physically combined, right? That you can combine the two to be batel. Velo od elo afilo achat bevayit echad be'aliyah v'echat be'aliyah mitzarfot. Even if one's in the house and one's in the attic, right? Vehu hadin afilu lemea, right? And this can be even if you have 100 of them, all right? What case the case? B'shishteim shel adam achat. Right, they have to still belong to one person. The fisha kol shehen shel adam achat atid lihitarev. Because if they belong to one person, eventually you'll mix them up. In other words, like imagine the scenario: I have two vats of olives or something, and one vat is in my attic and one is in my house. And eventually, I'm going to combine all my olives, but at the moment, and then a non-kosher olive falls in them. Right? Some that was made with non-kosher vinegar or something like that. It's like I can, and even though I don't have a ratio to to do beetle on that olive that fell in on either one alone. Together, I can combine them I can imagine in my mind to combine them. It's batel because I know in the end I'm going to combine those two vats.
This is the polar. This is the inverse of ein machzik be surah. Here we are machzik heter.
Exactly. Yeah. An interesting case question. This shows up in some of the commentaries. Oh, wait a second. Isn't that our case? Isn't our case even better? We know we're combining them, right? They got
Yeah.
combined. Yeah, you had an Isur with 20 and you had like 100 on the other side, but you have enough to do B-tool and you know they're going to all come back together. They did all come back together. Like, so why is this case? So there's a lot of interesting questions why the Yesho stream, don't say why doesn't everyone just drop, rely on Kuf Yud Aleph Zayin? And there's different explain. One's mean bimino, one's mean b'sheino, all sorts of attempts. But I think I just want to put out that these two things are kind of coming up against each other here. Ori,
Well, ours is cooking, and this is not cooking. This is
I
batel with knowledge, but not flavor transfer.
yeah, I thought about that, but it sounds like this is a case where they could also be hot, and this would still work if they're all going to be combined at the end. This is a question: why isn't this mivatel isor lecharchila? But be'adaim, but so there's a lot going on here. But in our case, anyway, even if that's a problem, you've combined them, and so it's kind of sounds like when you have an isor and then they get recombined, it's and it becomes batel, and you don't know where the isor was. I don't know. Maybe that's permissible. So again, you might be right. Maybe they're uncooked. Maybe there could be other reasons. But it's just as Rav Landis said, this is like we're holding on to the heter. We're going the other way. We're assuming things stay in their heter state, as opposed to saying that they are asur. Okay, that's I promised you I didn't.
It's an act of imagination.
It is. It is. I mean, it's what we have to do these cases, I think, sometimes, right? Is that we have to kind of, because we really don't know. The Metzias is not always so easy to determine, and we have to have klalot and we have to have, principles that we rely on in order to help us kind of determine them. So, and you can see nobody seems to agree on which ones we hold more strongly here, which is important. All right.
Okay, listen.
Yeah.
Call them up on each other because their logic, and sometimes the logic just you can't work it out. They really bump up against each other, so you prefer one to the other. It's choice. But when it comes to Mitzias is definitionally messy.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's half of what we're doing, and not half. I mean, it's a big part of what we're doing all the time. We're not just doing Clellan, we're doing what we think the messy situation gives us.
Yeah. And we also do have the problem here of the ikala mekama ala de milta at the end, right? You might eat the fish and taste Isor fish here, right? You can have all the claw you want, and you might taste Isor. And that's a problem. And that could be another reason to be Oser in this case. It's like if you have a chance, I don't know, do you chance it? You're like, well, it seems to be a good ratio, and like seems to be doesn't seem to work, right? Because then you really want to be in I had this happen once. I asked I think I told the story. I asked somebody a question about how they would poskin in a case. He's like, well, we can assume there was 60 there. I was like, I don't know. Do you want to assume there, that's you're gonna taste the Isur at the end of the day. So, all right, Kuf Zayin Shulchan Aruch. Who hasn't? Ori, you haven't read, have you? Oh, take us away.
I've just been bothering you a lot.
In a good way.
הבשל ביצים הרבה בקליפתן, לא יוציאם מהמים, שנתבשלו בהן עד שיצטננו, או ייתן עליהם מים צוננים לצוננם. So it's very practical when you're cooking the eggs together, many eggs together with their shells. Don't take them out hot. Wait until they're cold or add cold water before you take them out. ואחר כך יוציאם משום דחיישינן שמא ימצא באחת מהם אפרוח, ואם היה מוציא מהם קודם שהצטננו, שמא הייתה נשארת אותה שיש בה אפרוח עם האחרות, והייתה אוסרתן. לפי שלא היה נשאר שם 60 לבטלה. So, and the reason for this is that we have chashash that maybe when we take one out, we might be leaving the ratios, less than 60, such that the efrach egg is going to osir the rest of the eggs.
Mm-hmm. So, good. This is, by the way,
Very
this is
practical.
lechatchila or b'diavad?
It seems lechatchila. And
Yeah.
I thought about mevatel iser lechatchila, but I don't think it really is, right? Because it's more of the
Oh, yeah, yeah. I
it'll
mean,
only be a problem once I take it out, and I haven't taken it out yet, so we're not in a problematic state when we add this cold water.
oh, good, good. No, but I mean, what I meant is, if you didn't do this, would he be oser?
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Everyone look at the Taz, right? Lo yitzeh v'lo yitzeh min hamayim, right? B'torah chatat kol nun aleph dikdek midlo katav shulchan aruch de'im lo asa kein asur shma minei the dafke lechatchila kames here, right? He's only warning you. He's only concerned about this lechatchila with the avad mutar kesheyesh matirin kesh matirin shezacharama, and he must be after the fact. If you didn't cook your eggs this way, if you poured out the water, right, and then you found one with an efroach, but there was a ratio that could be to have betul, he would say, don't worry about it. But you lechatchila, this is how you should make your eggs, right? You make your eggs. You should pour cold water in them and then take them out or wait for them to cool down. So it's so good call, and I don't know, I'm not here to paskin, but even in a world where maybe dam efroch isn't such a or beitzat efroch isn't such a concern, maybe this is the Jewish way to cook eggs, right? Is to pour your cold water in or let them cool down and then take them out. So, and then your children can ask you why you're doing this, and you can explain beetle. So, okay. Let's
The
continue.
Rama makes
Yeah,
it
go ahead.
explicit.
Say again.
The Rama makes it explicit. Vim lo
Yeah.
asakin, but if you didn't do that, ela ira otan lekara, but you poured them into a bowl. V'nimtza achat mehen treifa. Yesh osrin. There are those who aser hakol osrin hakol. The chayshinan shema hatreifa nishar levasof v'lo haya shishim baktera lebatel. ונאסר מה שבקטרה, וחוזר ואוסר כל מה שבקערה. וכן בדגים קטנים שנמצא דג טמא, וכן בדגים קטנים שנמצא דג טמא בקערה, ולא אירע כולם בפעם אחת אל תוך הקערה, ואז יש לחוש שמא נשאר האיסור לבסוף. So he really just brings over the yesh osrim. It's very unusual that they're just sort of passing over the two shitots,
Yes.
which makes it just feel like they're very passive. I mean, especially the Beit Yosef didn't even mention the dog case. It was not moved to make a call on it.
Yeah, well, I know it's very interesting. It leaves out. You're going to see the Ramah's actually going to paskin. He's going to give us a rule here. But you're right. They are bringing both the Yesh Osrim and the Yesh Matirin here, at least the Ramah. So
okay, the Yesh Matirin b'chol inyan delo machzikinan isur, because he brings it sort of like the Bach. Lomar dinishar haisur below shishim. So we're not going to have a chazaka for nisur here, because we don't really know if there was 60 or not.
So
v'chein ikar, and that's the law. That's really the main din. V'afilu l'da'at ha'osrin ein le'esor ha'kelim shnitbashlu bo. Even for the machmir opinion, we're not going to be osir the pot. Dema'amidin hakli al chazakato. Because the kli would keep also its chazaka of a kosher pot.
good. So, yeah, this just to you notice the Ramah just he actually holds he says lo machzikin an isur. He's going to hold that that's what right. The Bach also brought that up in the case of why to permit in the Beis Yosef's case, and he says that's the way to go. And he's also holding on to the smug, which we saw from the Beitzim, right? That the kelim in any case, no matter even if you're going to be machmir about the food, you should be makil about the kelim because we're gonna hold them up on their chazak on their presumption. So interesting. the Taz doesn't necessarily poskin this way. He actually, I'll just read it. I don't want to try and have everyone find it. It's hard. Al kinere leachmir kedat rashal deveitzim asur uvdagim mutar. Kol zman she'efshar sheyesh yishim neged hame'at ma'im shenishar b'ketera. So he thinks that we're going to follow the rashal that in the egg case we're going to be oser, but in the dagim will be matir. So that's how he rules there. Not everyone follows the Rama. I will tell you the Rama also in the Torat Chatat. He brings a whole bunch of reasons to be Mekel beyond what he brings here, and the Shach takes him on all of them. So the Shach doesn't necessarily like them either, but this is a maybe Torat Moshe Emet, but so I don't know. Do we follow the Rama here? I can't tell you. As I said, a lot of the Achronim don't like that he's being makil about it, the Yesh Matirin. So I don't know. Rav Landis can tell you. Write to Rav Landis and find out how to paskin if you get this case. That's my answer. So I do with the last. Ori, go ahead.
It does have a klal ramification. Like the most important part here is the like suffix. Like there's a pour. Do we freeze the pour? Like they debate. The Bach wanted to really freeze it all and be very clear. If it's two pours, I'm just picturing flavor transfer, fish to fish,
Yeah.
even without water. If there is water, for sure, flavor transfer. But he sort of, and he mentions the being makil because of the suffix, but he's clearly more inclined to think of it, as a real flavor transfer case. But I think the more interesting cloud has to do with all kinds of actions that don't have a clear middle. You're doing a pour. I mean, hypothetically, there's a point in time where you don't have your 60 anymore. But in reality, it's also fluid. It's literally fluid.
It literally is, yes. Rav Landis.
Those younger poskim who I dealt with in this understood, can't talk anyway, understood that a flow is a flow, and is that complete filmatic video? It's not, but when there is a stop action, it's a stop action.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're two different piskei halacha.
Yeah. So
and you don't say how people do it. A flow is a flow. Once they hesitate a little bit, but most can say it's the same flow.
Yeah.
But if you set these so what's the difference? Conversation with Zalman Nechemia Goldberg. That's that if you set it down on the table, then you have two discrete actions.
So that's I like that. That's so if it's a continuous pour, even if like there's a little stop, but you're still like pouring it out.
Pour. It's
Yeah.
a pour.
It's a pour. It's a single pour. And if you pour and then you put it down and then you pour again, then you have to start worrying it. Be choshesh for the yeshosrin. Good. See, we get real.
I wasn't that young, but compared to now, it was pretty young.
So, Zalman Nechemia Goldberg is a very important posek in our world. So, all right, we have 7 minutes. I just want to look at the Sif Bet in the Shulchan Aruch because it's an important. This is like a real case that comes up a lot, also. Or you're doing such a great job. Keep reading the Shulchan Aruch here. You went back to the tour, didn't you?
No, I just went back a couple pages, thinking we go into some shach. Zvuv v'chayotze bo midvarim hamausim shenafsho shel adam katzeh bahem. So like a fly or something disgusting that people are naturally disgusted by. Shenimtza b'tavshil that you find in your cooked things. Zarko, zorko v'tavshil mutar. You just take it out and the tafshil is still allowed. She'ein pleitat dvarim elu hapugmim oseret. These kinds of disgusting things don't aser. It's ta'am lifgam.
Yeah, exactly. So good. Really think fly lands in your soup. You got to get rid of the fly. Obviously, you can't eat the fly, but you throw the fly out, and because nobody likes pleitat zvuv, right? It's tam bagum, and you can you don't have to worry that every time a fly falls in your soup, as long as you find it and take it out, that you have to, throw away the soup or worry about the ratios. Okay. Just read the beginning of the Ramah there.
וכן המנהג פשוט, אף על גב דיש מחמירים, דברי מקילין עיקר. ואין לשנות המנהג, ואם לקח, אם
Good.
הקח,
Okay. So yeah, that's good. Keep going. We have a few minutes, and
אם לקח בכף דג טמא מן הקדרה, או שאר דבר שאינו פוגם, אסור להחזיר הכף לקדרה. So if I take out a tray fish with a spoon, and this is not a disgusting thing. We're back to like the fish case, really. You can't put that spoon back into the pot. ואם החזירו, צריך 60 מן הקדרה נגד האיסור, ולא נגד כל הכף. If I do put it back, I need 60 from the pot against the isser, not the whole spoon.
Yeah, read the
like what would be absorbed.
But before you read the parentheses, there's I think this is a real thing, right? And I think I know this. You take something, you find an isur in your soup or whatever, you go to even like you say you have a 60:1 ratio against it, you go to take it out with your spoon. What do you take it out with? You take it out with the spoon that you're stirring with. All of a sudden, the spoon potentially is balua with isur, and your natural instinct is the spoon I've been using to stir my soup. Stick it right back in. Uh-oh. So now, but you says, right, you'd only need the ratio against it, but again,
the Isser Balua, not the whole spoon.
Exactly, and just read the parentheses. I think this is important. Dot smo. This is his own.
Dot smo. Delo amrinan gabe kli chaticha naset nevela. Right. This is only even if we're imagining that if we imagine the spoon to become Hanan, then it would be the whole kaf.
Exactly. This just to say this, the Shach plays this out. There's some people who actually say that this is not the case for Kli Cheres. That Kli Cheres does become Hanan, but that matechet or glass or anything else would not. Well, glass maybe doesn't. Depending who you ask, doesn't even absorb. But that metal or wood or would not become Hanan, but Kli Cheres might. I don't know if anyone's using Kli Cheres spoon. Spoons are all steel nowadays, right? I think, but wood, also wood maybe, but or silicone. Maybe I don't know what the silicone's kosherable, I'd say probably, right? Rav Landis? Yeah. So, all right, but keep going, Ori. Let's finish this up here.
אבל אם היה מעט מן התבשיל עם האיסור בכף, but if a little bit of the cooked thing was with the איסור in the cup, והוחזר לקדרה, צריך 60 גם נגד מעט התבשיל. But if we put that little bit back, we're going to need 60 against that little bit of the tavshil that was like sitting with the tray fish. Deharina asa nevela bakaf, because that little bit is Hanan.
Yes. So this is, of course, right, according if you hold Hanan Bashar Isurim, which we do if in the world of Ashkenaz, like the Ramah, then it's both if you take out the Isur with the spoon, you need both against the Isur and really everything you took out, right, together, because that's how much you need to have a ratio against a 60:1. Really, right, the best thing is if you have to do this, you have to take out an Isur with the spoon, is to put that spoon aside into your pile of stuff that needs to be kashered. I don't know if everybody else has a pile of stuff like that, but piles exist, and go get another spoon, assuming that you had the ratios for everything else to work out and the soup is good. All right. It's a lot to do in one day. And there's more. I really do. The long shach, if you have a chance to sit down, it's actually very wonderful. And he goes kind of through all the different arguments. He has a particular way he wants to go. But he brings you, there's so many issues that we have not resolved in these cases. And there's also, that's the shach and aleph. And then I think it's the taz and bet. No, it's further. No, it's taz and dalid. Taz and dalid goes through some of these as well. And going through the Matirim side. But next week, important announcement, next week we're off because it is Purim, although probably not for anybody actually here. Maybe Reuven, you're in Paris. Well, you're in Paris, right? You're
south of France.
You're in south of France. You might be Purim for you already. For us in America,
it's always Purim there.
Exactly. It's still the Tanit, and in Yerushalayim, it's you got another day. So, but we'll take off. Rav Nachum told me we're taking off, so I listened to him.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rav Linus. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you so much.